Good evening and welcome back to Driver's Ed Week 4. We are on the home stretch after we completed the midterm. We now have 5 more classes of content and then we will have our final. So we are definitely on the home stretch. So we're going to wait for people to sign in. Hopefully everybody had a great day off. I think you probably still had remote classes, but for the most part, when people get snow, I know part of the day is probably helping the family get shoveled out. So hopefully you've been outside to get some exercise. It's always tough coming back to doing a class online at night after spending all day in front of a computer. So I do realize it's a little different. I don't know if you can tell or not, but this is a new setup for me. I am no longer sitting at my desk. I am standing up. I have a stand-up desk that just came in this weekend, and we've got it all set up. So I am standing. So the vantage point is a little bit probably down from what you're accustomed to seeing. You can see a little bit more of my player piano just off to the side here. I'll have to get my posters and everything else up a little bit higher that I've had out before. Kind of low on numbers tonight. Here we go. Let's see who else we got here. All right, we're starting to get some people. Starting to get some eyeballs. We probably have enough here that I can explain that do not be discouraged by the test score that you may have received on the midterm. If you're in the mid-70s, you're probably right where you need to be. I put 80 as the passing score. It was difficult with the signs because there were a lot of signs that you just don't see around here. And what people usually do is when they study, they just look at what's in the manual. And I wanted to challenge you as a student, now that you know shapes and colors and everything else is so important with understanding signs, that I wanted you to see through the process of elimination how well you could actually do with a midterm like the one that I gave you. So if you were basically in the mid-70s, I think that's going to put you back into the low 80s, so you would probably be right where you need to be for passing on the final. Today was a miserable day to be out driving, but I do plan on driving tomorrow. I have someone scheduled for 2 o'clock. So if you want to drive at 3 or 4 or 1 o'clock or some other time tomorrow, please let me know. Send me a text message sometime later today, tonight after class, and we can go from there. So tonight's topic, and I don't have my my little worksheet or my guideline telling me. I know that it's driving in hazardous driving conditions. So when I set up tonight's class, I know that is what we're actually covering. But I do not have down what you had to read. So I believe that it could have been either 13 or 15 in responsible driving. Whatever it was. Responsible driving. Okay, Colette, you got 3, so we've got 4 o'clock open tomorrow and 1 o'clock if someone wants it. So remember, we're on the home stretch, so if you need some hours, try to sign up. So I'll try to dig it up a little bit later. I wasn't able to grab it. I've been doing some things here around the house and getting the driveway all cleaned up here at the end of the day. So let's jump right into tonight's topic, which is driving in bad weather. says, "What a mess." This is actually a picture taken from the Boston Herald probably about 8 years ago. And what struck me from this picture, and this is probably something that if we were to watch the morning news today, they probably had images like this on the news. We could probably see it in the newspaper tonight or tomorrow morning. And the thing that should cross your mind is, why did this happen? Did it have to happen? Living in New England, driving in bad weather is just a necessity. We can't get around it. Now, they cancel school and sometimes they'll cancel air flights. But for the most part, there are a lot of people, regardless of what the weather is, they have to get to work. So we're going to talk about what are the steps you should take to be a safe driver in order to get to your destination in bad weather. Now, if we take a look at this picture, and if we were to count the cars that we can just see, I think at one point we came up with like 8 or 9 vehicles. And then we looked at the tractor trailers and we saw that we had at least 6 or 7 that we could visually see. So we know that this was a huge pileup. Now, this is what I want you to write down. This is so important to understand when it comes to driving in bad weather. All crashes in bad weather can be contributed to 2 factors. The first one is going too fast. The second is your following distance. So let me give you an example. If we take a look at this picture, this is probably, it is Interstate 95, but the question is how fast was everybody moving? Let's just give it an arbitrary number of, let's say, 40, 45 miles per hour. If you are going 40 to 45 miles per hour and you're getting too close to other people, you're going to have to brake constantly. Eventually, someone is going to lose control. Bad brakes, bad tires, just hitting a bad patch. Then everything goes crazy because one car starts to slip and slide. Now everybody has to brake because they don't want to hit that one car. And if everybody's going a little bit too fast, a little bit too close, then we start getting a situation like you see here. But the thing I want you to remember about speed and following distance, there becomes a breaking point, meaning that on the interstate, 40, 45 was probably too fast. If, in fact, that's what they were going. Maybe they should have been traveling at 30, 35, dropping it down even further. There comes a point when you start to feel that your car is losing contact with the roadway. Once it starts losing contact with the roadway, and if you're not able to regain control, you now become a problem for other people on the roadway. Hopefully, everybody has a decent amount of following distance. If they don't, that's when we're going to have crashes. Let me show you an example. Now, in the state manual, they go over 3 different types of winter weather. So I want you to write this down. Ice, sleet, and snow. Ice, sleet, and snow. All right? And that's in order of severity. Ice is the worst, then sleet, then snow. And we basically had a little bit of all 3 types of weather today. I even think it might have even gone into rain. So rain, which starts, then it gets a little too cold, then we get our sleet, and then it goes to snow. And ice is basically the thawing and the refreezing of water on the roadway. So, and we'll talk more about what that is. But I wanted to show you this little clip here, just as a primer of what it may look like on the road tomorrow morning. This is a little bit of black ice. Watch this.
An expressway slick with ice, black ice, thin, nearly invisible to drivers. The ice has caused a car to crash in the fast lane. Trooper Jeff Oken parks his cruiser to prevent a pileup. But behind him, drivers are approaching way too fast.
Okay, we're not going to buy the DVD, but what do you think actually happened? I think we kind of know what happened. I think we basically know that going too fast, got too close to the parked car where the police officers, that the person actually hit a police car. Okay? Now, I don't want to make light of people losing control of their vehicle in bad weather, but there is a little bit of, irony that the people, and I think this comes up. Let me see if this comes up. If I go to the next thing here, let me go back right here. Drivers ignoring winter conditions may be subject to natural selection, which means that if you haven't learned this in driver's ed, if you haven't figured out, if you live in New England, how to drive in New England, well, guess what? Weather's going to get the best of you. It's going to actually make you look like a fool, like you don't even know how to drive. So here's a little compilation of different driving scenarios where people were going too fast, weren't able to regain control of their vehicle. So let's take a look at this.
I'll tell you, baby, we can go for a ride if you're hungry. I'm searching for the streets tonight. Look at your heart too. What if I showed you how I'm getting off of you? Baby, I think it's alright. And you know I can't, baby. Way too fast till the dawn when the world takes you back from the past and we're shattered. But this is what it's come to. And I push and you drive at the risk of your life on the street of the night where you let it come down. Oh, it's something that you can hang on to.
So you can see that these people actually were not the best of drivers. Most of these situations, one, should have never happened. Two, if it did happen, they should have dealt with it a lot better than they actually did. A lot of times they were making things a lot worse than they needed to be. So we're going to take a look at what we need to do when we get into some of these situations. First thing I want you to write down is ice. And what I want you to write down is ice is usually more of a problem November, December, and then March to April. And the reason why I want you to write down those two time frames is that we don't really consider November, December really winter. And it may rain during the day. Let's say it's around 42 degrees, but then it gets down around 32 degrees at night. So it freezes over. So when you wake up in the morning, you're not thinking about, boy, there's black ice out on the road. The roads are slippery. I better change the way that I drive. Same thing on the back end. We start losing the snow, and the snow melts, and then it refreezes in the morning. So the beginning of winter and the end of winter is when most people tend to let their guard down, and they find themselves in a situation where the road is refreezing in the evening, and in the morning, before it thaws out, they start to have problems. So we know that ice is frozen water on the roadway. We call it black ice because it takes on the resemblance of the pavement. Now, the reason why I put down where do you find it on the road? Now, all roads are either banked or crowned, so the water is draining towards the white edge line. So you're more apt to find icy conditions off to the right than you are towards the center of the road. Not saying that it doesn't happen, but less likely. Okay? Now, when ice forms on the roadway, it is not a vision problem. All winter weather can be broken down into traction problems and vision problems. Ice is not a vision problem. It is a traction problem. So the refreezing. Now, you may wake up in the morning and there may be like frost on the window, okay? But that's a little different than ice. Usually running your defroster within 5 to 10 minutes. All the areas that you need to see off to the side of your car, front windshield, rear windshield has a defroster, then you're going to be all set. So ice on the road is a traction problem. So if we know it's to the right, where should I drive on the road? Slightly to the left, slightly towards the center. And where cars have driven before you, they usually leave marks on the road. And what I want you to remember is you want to stay within those tire marks. And we call that tire tracks. And when it rains, we call those tire wipes. Your tire wipes the roadway. It pushes the water away from the roadway. And there's a little strip where the pavement is not, where there's running water. It's just wet. So it is a little bit different. You get better traction that way. So with every type of bad weather, we should always enter our car when we start out driving thinking about, okay, we know it's winter, we know it snowed today. How fast am I going to drive in some of these situations? So have a plan. Have an idea that when you encounter ice on the road that you're barely going to be able to move. If it's only a traction problem and not a vision problem, what's the fastest I should probably drive? Probably 10 miles per hour. Maybe a little bit higher than that, but probably never above 15. Now, I want you to write this down in your notes. That when you get involved in a car crash under 15 miles per hour, the airbags do not deploy. You have to be in a car going faster than 15 miles per hour for the airbags to deploy. Why is that important? No one's going to get seriously hurt inside a car at 10 miles, 12 miles per hour. If you bump into another car, bumper to bumper, you may do a little bit of damage, but not enough that's going to prevent you from driving to school. The car is going to still be drivable. But if you get into a crash going 22, okay, there could be a little bit more damage. Now you got airbags that are deployed. Now you may not be able to drive to school because the airbag's going to be taking up that whole steering wheel. So when you think that you're going to be involved in a crash and bad weather, trying to get it down to that 10, 15 miles per hour, your options to handle the car, your options to prevent the airbags coming out prematurely is going to be to your benefit. So go extremely, extremely slow. If you've ever stepped on a pond or an ice rink with like your shoes, if your soles of your shoes are a little bit warm and you step on ice, you're going to probably fall. I always laugh at some of the people coming out of their homes and walking to their vehicle. And think about it. They're barely able to stand up. Most of them fall. And now you're going to get in your car and you're going to drive down the road and you're going to go 30, 40 miles per hour. That's crazy. If you can't walk to your car with falling, what's going to happen when your car gets out on the roadway until the roadway gets treated? And that's why it's so important to have salt and dirt on the road. Now, here's a good example of how it's a traction problem about ice. So it probably rained, and as the rain started to hit the speed limit sign, it was probably right around 32 degrees. So it started to freeze up. It wouldn't drip all the way, and it just kept on caking on, caking on. And I would almost bet if we knew the time of day that this picture was taken, I bet you anything, it's probably right around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, where the temperature starts to rise a little bit. So that metal starts to heat up a little bit, and then that thickness of ice just slips on down. And that's what's on the road. If that's on a sign, that's on the road. Okay, the same thickness, same thickness. Now, the other thing I want you to write down is that icing on roadways happen around bridges first, okay? It's because you have air circulation below the bridge and above the bridge. And most bridges, I should say all bridges, are built with iron. And metal always retains temperatures a lot more efficiently. So the thermal warmth of the ground will keep some roads relatively wet in the wintertime because they don't thaw. I mean, they thaw, they don't freeze. But bridges are going to freeze and stay frozen most of the winter. So let's talk about sleet. How does it differ from ice? So we know it's frozen water. It comes from the sky. So it starts out as rain, and as it comes down through the atmosphere, the temperature changes and it freezes and it sticks to your vehicle. So once it starts to stick to your vehicle, we know that it forms a thick layer of ice on your car. So now it becomes a vision problem as well as a traction problem. Now, we know we should be driving at a slower speed, but what we don't usually do, and this happens to most people, is they don't take the time to warm up their car and to scrape their windows. So I want you to write this down. The most important thing before you get out on the road, besides getting in your car, doing the seatbelt and the mirrors and everything like that, is to start your car. The colder the temperature, the longer the warm up. You can warm your car up 5 to 10 minutes and you're fine in most winter weather. If it's down around 0, I'd probably go closer to 15. You need to heat up your engine. If your engine's not heated up, you're not getting a heated temperature coming through the defroster, and it's going to be cold inside. It's not going to be enjoyable to drive. Now cars come with heated seats, heated mirrors, heated steering wheels. Why do they do that? Because they want to make driving not only comfortable, but safe. So take a little extra time and plan your day when it's bad weather out. Where should you drive on the road? Same thing as we said before, where other cars have gone before you, probably a little bit off to the right. When you know there's going to be a slippery surface, so this is a little different with the ice, with black ice, we want to go a little bit towards the left because that's where the ice is forming, but it's going to have some traction off to the left. But when it's really the entire road, then you want to go more to the right, because if you do slip and slide, you don't want to be crossing over that yellow line too soon. So what is the speed? Is it the same as ice? No, it's slightly above. So you're going to probably go between 15 and 20, maybe a little higher, depending if you're staying in those tire marks of where other cars are. So driving in the sleet is very common in New England. And then for the thing that everybody fears, deep snow. Okay, so now we've got what we usually associate with, and if you looked at the newscast tonight, I don't know if any of you watched the news, but regardless, if you don't even live in New England, the whole country is getting pounded by this current storm, from like the Midwest, Chicago, all the way towards New England, even colder temperatures around the Carolinas. So some of these winter weather, storms is a couple days, and it covers a good part of the country. So we're going to see snow. No matter where you're moving, at some point you're going to probably encounter snow. And the deeper the snow, the more difficult it's going to be to drive into. So the worst type of snow is what we had today, and that's why we didn't drive. It's the wet snow. Wet snow basically sticks to your tire. Now remember, the only reason why we have grooves in our tires, the only reason why you have tread on your tires, is to move water and snow and slush away from your tire so your tire can grip the roadway. The best tire to stop with in the summertime is a tire that has no tread, because there's more rubber on the road, so there's going to be more friction, and you're going to be able to stop a lot more efficiently. But in the wintertime, just the opposite. The deeper the tread, the more aggressive the tread, and even some cars use what they call snow studs, studded tires, which have looks like little tacks that are stuck on their tire. And that's going to allow it to penetrate the snow or to the ice to give you some pulling power. But snow tires are pretty rough on dry pavement, meaning it's pretty loud in the car. And you're going to wear down the tires quite a bit. But in bad weather, it's the best thing to have. And the best type of snow to drive in is the dry snow. That's where it's just going off the roadway. It's just blowing away. So with wet snow, traction and vision are still problems. So as we said before, warm up the car, clean off the windows. And I do want to take a moment right now, because this is a new law that was enacted about a year or two ago, and they're really pushing people to make adjustments in their driving. It is against the law to drive where you have accumulated snow on the hood, roof, or trunk of your vehicle. And I know for a fact, looking at campus police, they will pull you over in Durham. They will pull you over, and one, they'll either give you a ticket, or they'll get you out of your vehicle and have you clear the snow off your vehicle. Okay, so that is a new law, and they're really, really strict on it. Very strict. There's not a winter that has gone by in the last 2 winters. I believe it's been 2 years since it's been enacted, that I haven't seen police officers making people clear off snow. It's pretty easy with a vehicle to clean it off, but I can understand an SUV, a van. It's kind of hard. You're going to have to get a ladder. You're going to have to get something that's going to get you up, get a broom, a roof rake or something to get the snow off. But you're still held accountable, even though you drive those big vehicles, to get the snow off. So be creative. Pull up next to a deck, stand on the deck, and then clear it off. Where should you drive in the road? Once again, traction. Stay in those traction areas. Stay in those places where cars have gone before you. Wet snow, I'd probably drop my speed by about 10 to 15, 20 miles per hour, depending on how thick it is. Dry snow, I'd be pretty close to the regular speed limit. Now, the other thing you might want to just put off to the side of your notes is watching what other people do on the roadway. If the people in front of you are having a difficult time controlling their vehicle, and they're about a quarter of a mile up the road from you, you can see them coming up the hill, and they're kind of slipping and sliding going up the hill. What would you be doing as you approach that hill? Okay, thinking about where to place your car. Start thinking about what the speed you want to do. And we haven't really talked about this except when we learned about the different gears in your car. If you see that a car in front of you is having a difficult time going up a hill, I would downshift my automatic to the lowest gear that I have. This is the time to use that lower gear. Could be an S, could be an L, could be a 1, could be a 2, but anything that's lower than drive is going to gear down your engine. It's going to give your tires a little bit more torque to get up that hill. Now, if we drive tomorrow, and I know Colette just signed up, and I know Marcus is driving it too, we're going to probably try to drive in a parking lot or someplace where we can find, if there is any more snow left, depending on how well people plow and what the weather is tomorrow. But we're going to try a few of these things. We're going to try out the ABS on the car, see what it feels like when we hit the brakes really hard on a slippery surface. We're going to take it someplace where we have to put it into a lower gear and see how the driver's ed car performs. It's really important that when you get your license, there's a good chance that you haven't done much driving with me or your parents in the winter weather, is to go out and practice. Even though driver's ed's going to be over next week, the learning doesn't stop, and I can't take everybody out in bad weather and give you an idea of what to do. This is why this lesson is really so important, that you can just take written notes, mental notes, anything that's going to help you out on the roadway to regain control of your vehicle once you start to lose contact with the roadway. And that's what we want to accomplish tonight. So drop your speed, find out what other people are going. And by the way, and a lot of people ask this question, if the posted speed limit on the highway is 55 and there's 2 lanes and everybody's in the right lane going around 40, if I go 50 or 55 miles per hour, even though I'm below the posted speed limit at 50, could I still get a speeding ticket? The answer is yes. Remember, speed limits are for ideal driving conditions. The minute you put yourself in a situation where you're going faster than other cars, if you're not thinking about following distance, you're probably going to have issues further up the road, which are going to create issues for other people on the road. So yes, you can get a speeding ticket for going the speed limit. What should you do if you become stuck in the snow and you can't get out? I'm going to get out of this for a second so you can see me, because I'm actually standing up. I'm going to stand away from the mic here a little bit, push my seat away. I'm standing behind my desk. That putting your hands on the back of your car and pushing a car that's stuck is the worst thing that you can do, okay? And a lot of times when a car is stuck, if you can't just push it forward to where it can get out, there's a technique that's called rocking the car, because there's probably one tire that's dipping and it's spinning and it just can't get any traction. The other tires are fine, but you got one tire. So what you'll do is you'll get behind that one tire, but go off to the side and push from the side. And it's called rocking the car. So you tell the driver to put it in drive. So the driver hits the accelerator, you push while it's in drive, and then they're going to say reverse. And then you let the car go backwards. Put it back in drive, and then you push forward. Put it back in reverse. It goes backwards. Then push forward. Okay, and what you're doing is you're rocking the car back and forth between drive and reverse till that tire comes out of that little indentation where you're being stuck. But if you're right behind the car, like I am right now, if it was to come out in reverse, you're going to run over the person behind you. So by grabbing it from the side, if the car comes out in reverse, you just step away. You step away from the car, and the car goes out. So step away from the car. So that's called rocking the car. If you're on a back road and you leave the roadway, you go right over the snowbank and then you go 30 feet into the woods. Your car may not even be seen. Very important when you're driving in winter weather to make sure your phone is fully charged. Now, most cars now we have, outlets where you can charge your vehicle if you've got a cord, or they have wireless. But the thing is that if your car breaks down or you don't have electrical power, you're not going to charge your phone. So make sure that you have a good phone that's active when you're driving in bad weather. There are 3 things that I always asked my son to do when he drove in bad weather. So you may want to write this down. Let your parents tell them this is what you learned tonight in driver's ed. That driving in bad weather, I know that sometimes the snow's going to start after you've gone someplace like school, could have gone to a game, could have gone to the movies. It was nice out. You were there for 2 hours. When you come out, you've got 2 inches of snow. It's a little bit slippery. So you got to get home, okay? So what do? 1, okay, write this down, 3 things. 1 is always call your parents and let them know that you're on your way home. So I'm going to use my son as an example. He's out with his friends to the movies. Dad, movies just got out. It's 11 o'clock. Okay. Second thing, how many people are in the car with you? Now, why would I want to know that? Because I don't want to get phone calls from other parents. How come our kids aren't home yet? I want to be able to answer questions. Third thing, what's the route you're going to be taking home from the movies? I'm going to take Mike home first, and then I'm going to take Carter home. So I know where Mike lives. I know where Carter lives. I know their parents. That way, if anything happened where my son was going too fast and went off the edge of the road, I could always go back. He called me at 11 o'clock. I know this is the route that he took. So let's see if we can find any marks in the snowbanking where the car could have left the roadway. And if he's got his phone, I should be able to find him by GPS. And he can call and he could say, I went off the road on Tolan Road, and I know where Tolan Road is. So I'd go to Tolan Road and I'd look for it. So be very considerate when it comes to letting your parents know where you are in bad weather. If you do have to walk in bad weather, please, please, please have a light, have reflective clothing, and always walk facing where traffic's coming from. If there's a time for you to really do what's right, this is the time to think of all these things that we covered, because I'll tell you, people blend in with snowstorms, meaning the snow just accumulates on your body and people can't see well. The wipers aren't wiping the windshield very well. People going too fast, and they hit something and they think they hit an animal. And when in reality, it's someone that's walking for gas. Okay, there's always a story someplace in the country where someone is being hit in the wintertime because the driver just didn't see him. So it's probably best to stay in the car. And we talked about why AAA is so important. This would be a time that AAA would actually come out and help you out. But the good thing to remember in bad weather, and a lot of people get upset at this, they go, I spent a lot of good money on AAA, and they said it's going to be 2 or 3 hours before they can come and help me. Well, guess what? Everybody else has AAA, and there's a lot of cars off the road. No lie. It's not uncommon for a bad storm where there'll be close to 100 cars in the area off the roadway. 100. So that's a lot of people to get a tow truck out to and pull them back out onto the road. All right, so be patient and just know what's happening. But what can we do? What can we do to make things a little bit better? Now, this is an extreme thing. This is actually Photoshop, so don't, worry about, this is just to let you know that snowbanks are going to be your worst enemy. And tomorrow, we're going to probably encounter some of this. This is true, though. This next picture is true. This is actually a real snowbank in northern Maine. If you take and a reason why I like it is the picture of the tractor trailer. It's above the cab. So you're looking at probably 10 feet. That's a 10-foot snowbank. So the question is, what do you do when you get to the end at the stop sign or a traffic light? It's going to be awfully hard to see because a car next to that truck would be hidden by the snowbank. You would not even see. If you're standing 30, 40 feet away from that snowbank, off to the side, you wouldn't even see a car. Wouldn't even see it. So what should you do? First thing is to get some practice of knowing what the car feels like when it loses contact with the road. So that means go to a parking lot, go to a hill, go someplace where you can actually start to make the car do what you want it to do, meaning to lose control. Now remember, you're the one controlling it. There is no light per se on a vehicle telling you that you're going to lose control. Now we do have a light on most cars now called traction control. So we do have a yellow light that comes on inside the vehicle that let you know that one tire, or could be more than one tire, that is losing some traction or all traction. Doesn't mean that you're going to be out of control, but it just means that it could be coming soon. So just be aware when the traction control light comes on, be careful about turns. If you're just trying to go forward or backwards, the traction control light comes on, it's not that bad because cars can basically go forward or go backwards and have some slippage. But when you start going or introducing a little bit of a turn, then you've got some serious problems. Try not to spin your tires. Brake early. It's very important to understand that do everything slower and earlier. Okay, slower and earlier. In the fall, make sure you've got the right type of tires on your vehicle. Make sure you've got good tread. They're not worn. Know how to use ABS. And like I said, tomorrow, people that are driving will probably do that. So how do you keep your car in good driving condition? That's a good point right here. Make sure your tires are properly inflated. Make sure that you've got heated air coming through the defroster. Make sure that you've got sand and a shovel in the back in case you get stuck. I have something called traction mats, and I'm not going to hold on just a second. I'm going to grab them. They're right near my feet. I don't know if you can actually see this. Let me click on this. These, whoa. Okay, these are traction mats. I could actually pull them out, but it gets a little bit tough to put them back in. But you can see that there's a little bit of a grip, a little bit of a tooth to them. Those go underneath your tires, and that's going to help you from spinning on snow and ice. So I took them out of the car. I got to put them back in probably for tomorrow. But traction mats, you can see I've used it over the years. These are probably 15, 18 years old, but lifesaver. I am usually always using those in the wintertime, but I just took them out because I knew that we have this class coming up. So I want to show you what they look like, but they got to go back in tomorrow. Make sure your windows, make sure that snow is taken off. We've talked about that. Watch for danger spots. That would probably be where the sun isn't penetrating through the pine trees, so those areas are going to always have ice and snow. The last thing here is carbon monoxide poisoning, and that is if snow is really deep and you're warming up your car. Be very careful that the exhaust doesn't leak back into the passenger compartment. That is going to be a real issue. So crack the window a little bit. Make sure you don't warm up your car in your garage. It's deadly. I mean, it can put you out in like 20 minutes to a half hour. You could be in your vehicle with it on and not even realize why you're getting tired is because of the carbon monoxide poisoning, and it can kill people. It really can. I had a girl once come up to me in class, and she told me that her dad was working on a vehicle inside their garage, and he was underneath it, and he was letting the engine run because I guess he wanted to see where the problem might be. But he didn't crack a window or open the door, garage door. And she said that that's how they found him underneath the vehicle. He had passed away after about 45 minutes to an hour working in the garage. So it was pretty sad. So something like this shouldn't happen. It's usually when the tailpipe is blocked, or if you're in an enclosed area like a garage. So make sure that you crack the windows. So let's take a look at what it would look like about driving in bad weather. So let's take a look at snow here.
there's also ice.
Ice on a roadway isn't like ice in a glass of water. You don't necessarily see it. If it's a sunny day, you can have glare on the road and it just appears that the roadway is wet when actually there is ice on the road, and it can catch you by surprise.
If you have to drive on ice, slow down to a crawl. When it's freezing or near freezing, be extra careful on bridges, overpasses, and streets shaded by trees or buildings. These areas tend to freeze before the rest of the roadway, and they're the last to thaw out. If it's icy and you approach a curve, slow down before you get to the curve. If you suddenly slow down or speed up while turning, you will go into a skid. Like ice, snow can be deceptive too.
Once it starts to pack down and then you have temperature changes where it melts some, freezes, melts some, freezes, then you end up with that icy condition again. And yes, you can see it, but it can still be very deceptive in terms of how slippery it'll actually be.
Again, it's essential to slow down. If you're driving in packed snow, cut your speed to half of what you'd normally drive. To increase traction, use snow tires or tire chains placed over the tire tread. Whether you're driving in snow or rain, the American Automobile Association gives 7 tips for safer driving. 1. Prepare in advance. Clean your windows and lights. Check the tread and pressure of your tires. Check your windshield wipers, headlights, and other equipment to make sure they're in good working order. 2. Be extra careful. Drive slower and allow extra space between your car and others. 3. Drive in the tracks of the vehicle in front of you. Since those tracks are drier than the surrounding pavement, they provide better traction. 4. Give plenty of advance notice to other drivers. If you plan to turn or slow down, let other drivers know early enough so that they have time to react safely. 5. Be alert. Watch for pedestrians trying to get out of the weather. 6. Keep your low beam headlights on. This helps you to see better and helps others to see you. And 7, ease your way into turns or curves, avoiding any sudden starts and stops. A few tips for when you and bad weather meet out on the highway. I'm Ryan Wickram.
So those are all good tips for driving in winter weather. Here's an example of warming up your vehicle. I thought this was kind of ironic that he got a ticket for warming up his car. I guess in some states that's not something that you can do with the car doors are unlocked. So lock them up. The other thing that I want to mention is winter weather school. Now, I know you're in driver's ed and we're talking about driving in winter weather, but there's a special school, and there's, I believe, 3 of them in New Hampshire that will take you to a skid area, like a runway for an airplane, and they'll set up obstacles, and you kind of go around, you get the car into a skid, you try to get out of it, and they kind of get a little bit more involved than what I can for just a single class like we're covering tonight. And I believe that insurance companies will give you a discount on your insurance if you take this class. And in some states, I don't think New Hampshire is one of them, that they can help sponsor you to take the class or give you a reduced rate if you want to do it. But I do believe that we have a couple here in New Hampshire, but this is what it would look like. So I found this on the internet, so let me show you this.
Looking for a new car or truck? TheAutoChannel.com has the most complete.
While driving on ice and snow can be a frightening experience if you're not mentally and physically prepared, there really are no deep, dark secrets to controlling your vehicle in difficult circumstances.
The Bridgestone Winter Driving School features purpose-built tracks designed to duplicate the most challenging, real-world driving situations.
It is critical to clear all snow and ice from your vehicle, including the roof. Snow left on your roof will quickly obscure the rear window, and when you begin to drive, large chunks of flying snow can block the vision of drivers beside or behind you. To steer smoothly and correctly, place your hands at the 9 and 3 o'clock position on the steering wheel. Keeping your hands on opposite sides of the steering wheel allows you to steer through a corner efficiently and precisely.
Do not attempt to deflate your tire to gain a bigger contact patch with the road surface, because this will only lessen the performance of your tire. Only a properly inflated tire offers maximum grip. Also, Remember, tire pressure can change according to the outside temperature. Tire pressures drop 1 psi for every 10 degrees in temperature drop. Also, check your tire pressures regularly to ensure proper inflation. This is especially important in late fall or early winter as temperatures begin to drop. The #1 rule of safe winter driving is to adjust your speed to the current conditions. These conditions include the type of tire, road surface, visibility, the type and weight of your vehicle, and your driving ability. With the traction control and stability control systems in today's cars, many people become overconfident or simply complacent. These systems can help drivers by alerting them to improper responses or correcting small mistakes, but they can't overcome the laws of physics. If your car is equipped with standard brakes, the most effective way to stop in an emergency situation is to use the pumping technique. Most drivers are aware of this concept of pumping the brakes, but don't really understand the proper technique.
So those are great tips on driving in winter weather, and I fully endorse any type of extra training that you get in bad weather because I do think it will make you a better driver. I still haven't participated in one. I've been tempted to try it, but haven't had the time. I think we've gone through most of this right here. Just know that a red flag on a vehicle that has no electrical power lets people know, alerts people that you need help. It's a sign of a disabled vehicle. Now, in the summertime, as we talked about with driving emergencies, a white flag or something white attached to the door handle or antenna is a sign that you need help, with your car. If you do stay in the vehicle, just don't you waste all your fuel. Let's say you break down on a back road. You've only got 2-3 hours worth of gasoline. It's 11 o'clock. If you go straight 2-3 hours from 2 o'clock till when sun rises, it's going to be freezing. So what they're saying here is run the heater, then turn it off for a half hour to an hour until you really can't bear it anymore. Then heat up the car again. Try to conserve fuel. And this is usually for cars that have left the pavement. But remember to crack the window because we do not want carbon monoxide poisoning to happen. The next type of bad weather, and I don't consider it extremely bad because it's not a traction problem, but it's a vision problem. So write down in your notes, fog is only a vision problem. It's not traction. And if fog is happening just before winter, at the end of the winter season, remember fog is just moisture in the air. So there's a new term that's out. It's called frog freeze. What is frog freeze? Frog freeze is when you do come out to your car in the morning and you have that layer of frost. And what you have on your car is also out on the roadway. So even though it's not black ice where it's really thick and hard, depending on the surface, it could be like concrete that's, kind of slippery anyways, that when you have that frog freeze, like pulling into a parking spot, you may encounter a little bit of a problem. So this is kind of interesting. This is what it looks like. You see two cars right here in this snapshot. But guess what? There are cars coming from the opposite direction. We just don't see it. Watch this.
Fog is considered the most dangerous of all driving hazards. The best advice for driving in fog is don't. It's simply hard to see what's around you. If you must drive, then slow down and turn on your low beam headlights. The low beams help you to see and help others to see you. Driving instructor Zandrea Baldwin emphasizes to use low beams, not high beams.
If you have your high beams on, the glare is going to come back toward you from the fog. The fog is pretty much like a light, and if your light is shining against the fog, it's going to glare back into your windshield, and it could actually cause temporary blindness.
Because of the reduced visibility, it's vitally important to slow down and stay slowed down. Also, Use the right edge of the road as a guide rather than the center line. This can help you to avoid running into oncoming traffic or from becoming distracted by oncoming headlights. And don't be too proud to ask for help.
Get your passengers involved. Have the passengers help you out, checking blind spots and things of that nature for you.
If the fog gets really thick, signal and pull off the road to a protected area. Then wait for the fog to let up. While pulled over, turn on your emergency flashers to make your car more visible to others. A final note, whatever you do, don't stop in the middle of the roadway, no matter how thick the fog is. That almost guarantees that someone will hit you from behind. Again, it's best not to drive in the fog at all. If you have to, stay alert. I'm Katina McHenry.
So let's talk about fog just a little bit. Usually we do find it around areas that have water or some type of wet area like a marsh or a bog or something like that. It's usually in the morning or late afternoon, and usually it's with a drop of temperature. Have you ever been near a lake or ocean in the summertime? Usually in the summertime, temperatures are in the 80s and 90s, but in the morning, it's around 50 or 60. That's a big dramatic drop of 30 to 40 degrees in temperature. So when we start to see those temperatures either climb or drop, it's going to change what is happening with water. And that's when you're going to get the vapor and the mist. And usually fog drifts, meaning that it moves. It's not something that stays stagnant on the roadway. If you pull over to the side of the road like you saw in the video, you're probably not going to be there too long. So don't think it's going to, ruin your day. It's going to make you super late. It's probably only going to be, a couple minutes to 5 minutes where you're going to start to see it lighten up or at least move a little bit. But always drive with your low beams on. Always stay off to the right edge. And by the way, the state calls that white edge line on the side of the road your fog line. That is where you're focusing your attention. That is where you're driving your vehicle. When you see other cars, try to get a good grasp of where they're located. They could be drifting over. So look for quick stops. Keep within what you can see with your eyes. You never want to drive so fast that you can't stop. And then if it's super heavy and it's not going to move, like in a couple of minutes or 5 minutes or so, pull over, put your flashers on and wait. But usually try to find a safe place like a parking lot. Because even on the side of the road, sometimes other cars will gravitate towards a car that's got blinking lights on, thinking that it's still moving. To show you how dangerous that fog can be, I found a clip from California. Of course, they're on the coast. But take a look at the top picture. The guy that's on top of a vehicle is looking inside of his car. If you look at the bottom picture, there is just car on top of car on top of car. And in the caption below, it said 200 vehicles. Think about that. 200 vehicles crashed into one another. How long do you think it's going to take a tow truck to pull one car after another car after another car? And now I know some of them will probably be able to move on their own, but all of them are damaged. All of them are going to have some insurance paperwork to do. And on the top article, when it talks about how fast they were only going 25 to 35 miles per hour. So you go, but they were going super slow. But guess what? The one thing they didn't have going for them, they were going at a slow speed, but they couldn't stop within of what they could see. So their following distance was bad. And I did the numbers on this. It said that they were traveling 25 to 35 miles per hour, but they only could see roughly 50 feet in front of them. If you're traveling 30 miles per hour, 50 feet isn't long enough to stop. You actually need like 57, closer to 60. So there's 7 to 10 feet that wasn't accounted for. So where is that 7 to 10 feet? It's the car in front of you. You're going right over the top of the car in front of you. And this is why things started to pile up. Okay, let's talk about 3 types of weather that we do not have in New England, but you may encounter when you move out of this area to another state. So the 3 that we're going to be talking about, now some of them do happen. We do have high winds every once in a while, but not like what they have over on the West Coast. Okay, so the West Coast is going to have extremely high winds, and down south too. And what you're going to see from the video is that even a large truck, now this truck doesn't have cargo, so it is super light, but it's got a big, huge trailer in the back, so that's a large mass area. So it's almost like a sail on a sailboat. Once the wind hits that sail, it's going to make that sailboat just fly. It's going to move right along. Now, when the wind hits that side of that tractor trailer cab or a trailer, it's going to actually knock it right over. So watch this. So you can see that it's pretty bad. So let's kind of write down a few things if you're driving in a high wind situation. Be extremely cautious on wide open areas, especially bridges, or when you're going through like a desert area where the wind can just pick up and whip right across. Second thing that you should take away from this video is never drive side by side with a large truck, because you don't. I feel bad for that police car. You see that police car get crushed? That truck just pancaked that police car. Okay, he thought he was, helping someone out, and the truck was just losing balance. And the other thing too is some of these trucks, they get paid to get to their destination with a certain amount of time. So I understand why they want to keep on traveling, but if you're going to endanger other people, you probably shouldn't be out on the road. So anytime that the weather is so bad or you don't have control of your vehicle, you should think twice about continuing driving. Now, the next type of bad weather that we don't have here is driving in sandstorms. I think it's sandstorms. Let's see if this is the next one. Yep, sandstorms. So just like we saw with the high wind, it's a windy situation, but because of the dryness, the sand will actually get picked up from the desert. So this is more of a Midwest problem. But what you're going to see here, it's almost like driving in fog. So just what we talked about driving in fog, put your headlights on, stay off to the right, pull over if you can't see, increase your following distance. So everything that we talked about with fog would apply for driving in a sandstorm. So let's take a look at driving in a sandstorm. This video was only 1 minute and 30 seconds. So right now I still have the beginning image of the video. Look at what you can see. Look at all the cars in front of you, cars coming towards you, your traffic lights, how clear it is. Within 1 minute and 30 seconds, it was like driving at nighttime. These things can come. Now, the thing about sandstorms, just like fog, they come and go pretty quickly. So I would almost bet at that intersection or even the next intersection, there's going to be a plaza, there's going to be a place to pull over. I probably wouldn't be driving in it. The other thing you got to worry about too with sand is what it does to the body of your vehicle, meaning it can pit glass, it can dull your paint, and it also can work its way into your air filtration system, that you're going to get some air in your air filter. So be extremely careful about driving in a sandstorm. Now, the next one does happen around here, and that's driving in a hailstorm. That's usually in a warm climate where the temperature drops very quickly, and as the water, the storm comes, it crystallizes and forms large hail, pieces of hail, which is like sleet that just kind of formulate together. And in this video, it is a good size. It's about the size of a golf ball or a little bit bigger. And you're going to see it actually breaks the window. So what you want to do is look for an underpass, look for a gas station, someplace that you're going to be protected. If you're out on the road, just pull over to the side if you can find a tree. The leaves on a tree in the summertime will act as some type of a buffer. But you'll be surprised the damage that will happen in a hailstorm. Watch this.
Oh, and there's that beautiful wall cloud right in front of us. That we're getting baseball-sized hail. Oh my gosh, bigger than baseball. Woo! Woo! We're getting close to grapefruits over here. And I got it on camera. Oh my gosh, we've got softball-sized hail going on. And I just got, yep, I'm okay. I just got glass all over me. We got to get out of this. Yep, that just happened.
How are you going to get out of it?
We don't just keep driving. That's all we can do. I have glass all over me.
Don't move. Don't move.
If I'm gonna, oh my gosh. Yep, got that one too. Can we find a place to pull under?
I'm trying to. I don't think the trees can work.
Oh my gosh, this is the biggest hail I've ever seen. Oh, and it's, oh, I'm covered in glass. This,
what do you want me to do?
There's nothing you can do, man. Pull up beside that building. We've lost our windshield. This is 5 to 6 inch size hail. I mean, it's bigger than softballs and grapefruits. I've never seen this big a hail in my life. Incredible. I've never seen hail this big.
Holy shit, man.
The only thing that I don't have a clip on is flooded areas. So rain is the next bad weather condition we're going to talk about. So I don't have anything about flooded areas. So you got to be very careful because sometimes rain can come down in like inches, you know, within an hour or two, and then it starts to clog up all the drains and we get low-lying areas flooding in. So the thing to remember about a flooded area is watch for low-lying areas. Do not enter an area that you do not know how deep it is because your car can get lifted up. Believe it or not, as heavy as a car is, you drive through, oh, Troy, man, you better text me at the end of class. We got issues. All right? We got to talk. I just saw you just piped in for tonight's class. We got to talk. All right? Flooded areas, the car get picked up and lifted down the river. I guess it's like a flowing river when you get a lot of rain or whatever. So if you don't know how deep it's going to be, then you better just don't drive through it. Find a different route. Stay home. And rain is really not so much a traction problem unless you're going through those flooded areas. It is visibility. If you are losing contact with the road, the term that you're going to see in the manual is called hydroplaning. And hydroplaning usually starts at around 35 miles per hour. So you're not going to find it driving around Durham at 25, 30 miles per hour. Rain does get to be a little dangerous in the summertime. The first half hour, they say, the water mixes with the oil that's on the pavement. When you look at a stop line or a parking spot, you'll see little oil spots. So those oil spots are drippings from your vehicle, because cars do leak oil and gas and other fluids. So when it mixes up with just a little bit of water, then you're going to slide. You're going to slide on those sections. And in the fall, wet leaves, okay, get kind of piled on top of one another, and your tires are gripping the top layer of the leaves. The bottom layer is still grabbing hold of the pavement on the bottom, and you're going to slide. You're going to push your vehicle in the fall on these back roads with heavy leaves piling up. So be careful about getting too close to the right where all the leaves are. Headlights in some states, Maine is one of these, Massachusetts is one, New Hampshire is not. But I want you to know this, so because we live so close to these states, that when you have to use your wipers, your headlights have to be on. Now, I still believe that you should have headlights on every moment of the day that you drive, just so your car stands out for other people. But I want you to remember, in Maine and Massachusetts, when you're using your wipers, by law, you have to have your headlights on. If not, you're going to get fined. I have a friend from high school. He was a year or two behind me. Good driver. Never had problems driving. He got pulled over, and they gave him a fine for not having his headlights on when it was misting out and he had his wipers on. And I think he told me it was $125. Now, to me, a guy with a clean record, to me, he should have had a warning. But I also know my friend, and he's got a little bit of an attitude. He's got a little bit of a mouth to him. So I'm suspecting he gave the officer a hard time, gave him a little bit of lip. Okay? So rather than take what the officer was telling him, he gave it back to the officer, and it ended up being a $125 ticket. So remember that. So some states, Maine, Mass, do have it. Signal and brake well ahead, just like we talked about other bad weather conditions. You want to be planning early. It's better to be too slow when you're doing things in bad weather than to be too fast. And in all the years that I've been teaching driver's ed, I've never had a student come up to me and tell me they had a problem going too slow. Oh, Mr. Toll, I was going too slow the other night around a corner and I ran into a tree. It's usually, Mr. Toll, I got into my first crash. I think I was going a little bit too fast, and I think there might have been a little bit of ice on the road, but I went right off the edge of the road and right into a tree. Well, my question, I don't say this, but I think in my head, if you went a little bit slower, I bet you it wouldn't have happened. So it's better to go too slow than to go too fast. People will react to your braking as long as you do it well in advance. Now, don't brake a lot real quick, because then other people will slip and slide behind you and they might not be able to stop. The other thing with rain is know the difference between a pothole and a puddle. A puddle is less defined. A pothole almost looks like a circle. And the other thing about a pothole is it will always be, you'll see broken pieces of pavement around the water. So that's a clue that you're going to be going down deep into that area and then coming back out. All right, so know the difference. Try not to hit either one. Pothole is worse than a puddle, but a puddle will draw you towards the middle of the puddle, and it will affect your steering a little bit. But a pothole, if you hit it, you could get a flat. You could ruin your suspension. You could ruin your alignment. So look for these areas and try to stay away from them. So there's a car right there in between those red arrows. You can see the lights of cars behind them, but the car closest to us does not have headlights on. So when you look in your side view mirror, maybe for merging or for passing, you're just not going to see it. That's just hidden. That's not saying car to you. For most people, unless there was red arrows like this, you're just not seeing it. Let's take a look at rain.
The weather can present traffic hazards. Take rain. It's a hazard from the moment the first drops fall. This is when rain first mixes with oil and dust on the pavement. It's very slick. This is what happens. The dirt and oil float to the top of the water. So tires ride not only on the slippery surface of water, but also directly on the even more slippery surface of oil and dirt. It's no wonder so many crashes happen just after it starts raining. Eventually, dust and oil wash away, but plenty of hazards remain. Rain, especially heavy rain, limits your ability to see. It's hard for you to see what's going on, and it's hard for other people to see you. In addition to making it difficult to see, rain keeps roads slippery. Traction becomes a critical issue, and hydroplaning, a real danger. 3 main factors cause a car or truck to hydroplane: speed, tread depth, and water depth. The faster your car or truck goes, the more traction you lose on a wet surface. The more worn your tires are, and the shallower the tread, the more likely your car is to hydroplane. Even a thin layer of water can cause your car to lose traction. But as the water gets deeper, you lose traction sooner.
It all happens in a space no bigger than the bottom of a size 9 shoe. Now picture this. It's a smooth roadway. There's moderate rain, and you're traveling at 60 miles per hour. Under these conditions, each tire has to move away about 1 gallon of water every second. All in a space no bigger than this shoe.
Each gripping element of the tread is on the ground even less time, 1/50th of a second. During this fleeting moment, the gripping element must move the water from beneath the tire and then grip the road surface. If this doesn't happen, your car may likely hydroplane.
When a car hydroplanes, the most important thing that someone needs to remember is don't panic.
First, do not brake or accelerate suddenly. Since hydroplaning is a loss of traction to the front tires, sudden braking on a front or rear wheel drive slows the front tires but locks the rear tires. This can cause a spin out. Also, sudden acceleration on a front or rear wheel drive may take the vehicle straight ahead. This could be dangerous if the vehicle is pointed toward the edge of the roadway. According to some driving experts, what you should do depends on the type of vehicle you're in. Listen for the type of vehicle you drive. A front-wheel drive with an anti-lock brake system and traction control system. Front-wheel drive without an anti-lock brake system and traction control system. A rear-wheel drive with an anti-lock brake system and traction control system. If you begin to hydroplane in one of these types of cars, then some driving experts suggest you do this. Look for open space and plan to travel in that direction. Stay lightly on the accelerator and steer gently toward the open space which you have identified. If you are in a rear-wheel drive without an anti-lock brake system and traction control system, then do this. Look for open space and plan to travel in that direction. Ease off the accelerator and steer towards the open space which you have identified. Traction control systems, by the way, have been installed in vehicles for a number of years now, but everyone may not be familiar with it. This is a system that prevents tires from spinning under acceleration. If your vehicle has a traction control system, there should be an icon indicating so on your dashboard.
Another note, it's important not to have the cruise control engaged in heavy rain due to a sudden acceleration problem. The vehicle will recognize the water buildup as a slowdown and ask for more power. This need for more power may shift, causing the vehicle to shift to a lower gear and build more water under the tires. This causes a cycle of more power and more push on the front tires.
You can avoid hydroplaning by making sure the tread on your tires is thick enough and by slowing down. Here's a good rule of thumb for checking your tread. Stick a penny upside down in your tread. If Lincoln's head is hidden, then your tread is thick enough. If the tread doesn't hide Lincoln's head, then your tread is too thin and you need new tires. When it comes to speed on a...
So anytime that your tread is below that, in New Hampshire we say 2/32 of an inch, so the penny trick is good. But if any portion of your tire doesn't have that tread depth, they consider your tire invalid. It won't pass inspection, and it's not adequate for driving. So just remember to check your tires to make sure you're getting the best benefit from the tread. We already talked about that. Oh, hydroplaning, you got to remember, tires are riding on top of the water. But the third thing is that it's more apt to happen on roads that weren't built very well, okay, back roads. And when hydroplaning does take place, you can't brake, you can't accelerate, you can't steer. So nothing is happening inside the vehicle. And it's almost like skimming a rock on water. That's what hydroplaning is. So when your tire does re-grip the road, whatever you're doing inside the car, so whether it's turning the wheel, stepping on the brake, accelerating, the minute your tire touches the pavement again, your car is reacting that way. And that may be problematic, especially when it comes to steering. So don't get too funky with your steering. Try to keep the car going where you want it to go and just wait for the car to re-grip the road. So reduce your speed when you know that there's rain or slush on the roadway. Stay away from the puddles, standing water. We talked about that. We talked about inflation and wear and tear. Like we said with driving emergencies, anytime you're losing contact, think about where you want your car to go next. So it's more of a steering problem than a braking or accelerating problem. Let's talk about nighttime driving. Okay, and here it states at the top that fatality rate. So we're talking about people that are passing away in the vehicle in a car crash. It's 3 times greater at night than during the day. So we know your challenge as a driver will be nighttime driving. And this is why the state requires you to do 10 hours before you can go for your driver's license. They want to make sure that you've got some experience with an adult, with a driving instructor of what to be looking for, how to handle it, because it's a different ball game. You just don't see what's happening with peripheral vision off to the side. You can see where the lights are illuminating, but that's a very small path of where you're traveling. So anything that comes like pedestrians, animals, even cars sometimes may not have bright lights. You may not see them. So driving at night, things are going to be a little bit more tricky until you get more experience behind the wheel. Now, of the fatal crashes, there are 3 categories. I want you to write this down, of people passing away in car crashes at night. And that would be young people, because you drive faster, so fast that you can't see where your light's illuminating. Alcohol and drugs would play a factor at night, so it's the people that are impaired. And then the last group are elderly people, people that don't see well, and they just don't see where the road's going. They don't see cars stopped. So elderly people usually have a more difficult driving at night than during the day. So overdriving your headlights, like I said before, is where you think that driving 50 and a 30's, fun, it's cool, and it's not a problem, but you're 20 miles over the speed limit, and you're not going to be able to see that great on some of these back roads. So if you've got to slow down and by the way, most roadkill happens at night than during the day. It's because by the time it's illuminated in your headlights, you can't stop, and you're hitting it. And a lot of times when the animal gets into that path of where your headlight is illuminating, it freezes them. They kind of hold their place. They're not trying to run out of the way like they do during the day. So high beam shine about 350 feet, low beam shine around 100. So when you can on back roads, I would recommend putting your high beams on. Law states that headlights must be on. And by the way, I will test you on the final with this one, so make sure that you write that down. The law states headlights must be on a half hour after sunset to a half hour before sunrise, or any time where vision is limited. So a lot of people say, well, why isn't it like from 6:30 at night till 5:30 in the morning? Because daylight savings, it gets darker and lighter different parts of the year. So think about when the sun goes below the horizon. It's still relatively light out, but you got to have your lights on a half hour after you don't see the sun at all. And then in the morning, the sun comes up. It's still light before we see the full image of a sun. So you've got to keep it up, keep the lights on that whole period. Let's take a look at driving at night.
From sunrise to sunset, drivers have a huge advantage in the sun. Although it's easy to take for granted, the sun makes it immensely easier for us to see.
Once darkness falls, driving becomes a whole new ballgame. There's no doubt about it. Driving is a lot dicier after the sun goes down.
Driving at night does present a whole new set of circumstances for any driver, a young driver or an older driver.
Darkness itself is a hazard. Even people with the best of vision cannot see as well at night. To begin with, your field of vision is less. You actually see a smaller amount of space. Objects are not as sharp, you can't perceive dips and rises as well, and you have a harder time distinguishing colors.
A person with excellent vision still needs to remember to slow down and be aware of all the hazards that could present itself at night.
You can only see as far ahead as your headlights shine. That makes it harder to see pedestrians, cyclists, animals, obstacles in the road. So go slowly enough so that you can stop within the distance lighted by your headlights. If it's safe, use your high beams, especially on open highways. But always know when to change to low beams. If you approach another car from behind, or if you meet an oncoming car, then switch to low beams. High beams blind other drivers and increase the likelihood of a crash. To avoid being blinded, don't look directly at oncoming headlights. Instead, look to the right edge of your lane and watch the oncoming car out of the corner of your eye.
A couple of other brief points. Never drive with just your parking lights on. Parking lights are designed for parking. They're not a substitute for headlights. And keep your windshield and your headlights clean. They can get real dirty real quick. It's easy enough to do.
Okay, the last thing that we want to talk about is, glare. So adjust your day-night mirror, your rearview mirror. There's a little lever that you can flip up. Headlights, as they said in the video, look off to the right. But the last thing I want to talk about is fatigue driving at night, being very, very tired. If you've ever been in a state in a class where you're just trying to focus and listen to the instructor, maybe you're in church, maybe you're watching late night movies with your friends and you're just trying to stay awake. You pushed your body to the limit for the day. Well, your body needs rest. And driving is going to be no different, meaning that you're driving at night, probably after a long day, and your body usually wants to go to sleep. So you start closing your eyes and then opening them up again. The thing you need to remember is if you're closing your eyes and then opening them up, you should pull over the side of the road, get some sleep. You should get somebody else to drive. There are a lot of different things you can do to fight what they call highway hypnosis. But we find that most people have a problem from midnight till 6 in the morning, or mid-afternoon would probably be more elderly people. But if you're nodding, it's called nodding. If you're nodding off, you're not seeing the road. It's almost, and it sneaks up on you. And you don't think that it's that bad, and you think you could get home. You only get a little bit of a ways to go. Try not to do it. Try not to do it. I'm going to show you this last clip, and this will be it for tonight. But how fatigue can really get the best of you. Watch this.
Back at 7:44 this morning on Today investigates a serious hazard facing young drivers that is often overlooked. NBC's senior investigative correspondent Lisa Myers is in Bethesda, Maryland with details. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, Meredith. We're talking about driving while tired. We've all done it, but experts say it's particularly dangerous for teens. Fatigue is a factor in at least 100,000 crashes every year, and most of those involve young drivers who get behind the wheel when they're drowsy and never make it home.
I sit and I replay that night over and over and over again, and I thought, I'm just so close to home. I can make it.
That night, Rusty Burris was 18 years old with a bright future. But driving home from his girlfriend's house, his life changed forever.
I knew I was tired, but I didn't really feel that I was that tired. And driving home, I got just a mile from home and fell asleep at the wheel.
In seconds, Rusty's car drifted off this country road and rolled over. The impact crushed his roof and his spine. Rusty would never walk again.
I've fallen asleep and crashed my car one time. And that's all it took.
Experts say every day, millions of teens are dangerously tired when they get behind the wheel. More than a third of teens say they drive drowsy on a regular basis, and more than half of all fatigue-related crashes involve drivers under 25.
It's a huge problem, and it's probably bigger now than it was in the past.
Tom Balkin is president of the National Sleep Foundation. He says adolescents go through changes in their circadian rhythms that make it nearly impossible for them to fall asleep before 11 p.m. Combine that with early morning classes, after-school jobs, and late-night socializing, and it's easy to see why teens are chronically sleep-deprived.
The average college student needs about 8.5 to 9.5 hours of sleep. Virtually none of them get that. In fact, they average 6 hours of sleep per night.
So how can fatigue affect their driving?
Today's show, how may I help you?
To find out, we set up an unscientific experiment with 3 Today Show interns, Patrick, Meredith, and Brian, all college students who habitually drive after not much sleep.
Last summer, I was driving tired almost every day.
When it's final season, there's no sleep. That's when the drowsy driving starts to kick in.
For our experiment, we kept our kids up for an entire night, no naps or caffeine. Experts told us that would simulate the level of fatigue students typically suffer after a week of insufficient sleep.
You don't want to hit a cone.
Then we brought them here to the Skip Barber Driving School in Connecticut, where with safety instructors by their side, we put them through 2 road tests, a tight, twisty loop, and an emergency lane change.
We're testing today their ability to instantaneously react to an unexpected situation.
Hitting any cones would be the equivalent of a crash in the real world. The day before, all 3 had driven these courses wide awake and aced them.
I haven't hit any cones, and I think it's not that hard.
I feel pretty confident. Once you got the hang of it, it wasn't that bad.
But watch the difference when they're drowsy. Our kids swerve wildly through turns, hitting cone after cone after cone.
If that had been a real-world situation, he would have had a pretty violent crash.
Inside the car, you'd never know it. Even as they crash, our drowsy students remain slack-jawed and dazed. Patrick clearly is giddy. He almost seems drunk.
In many ways, driving drowsy is very much like driving drunk.
We showed the video to Tom Balkin, our sleep expert. He says drowsiness, like alcohol, can severely impair a driver's reflexes, judgment, and awareness. Should parents be as worried about kids driving when they're too tired as they are about them texting while driving or driving drunk?
Absolutely.
Especially, he says, on long, boring roads like the one where Rusty crashed. So we also tested our kids on this monotonous 2-mile track, each driving it for half an hour.
At first, I thought I did okay. You know, I thought I was in control.
But their dead stares tell a different story. Balkin says these are signs of a dangerous condition called microsleeps, where your eyes stay open, but your brain is falling asleep.
And this is the kind of situation where anything unexpected actually could throw them.
Like these surprise cones. We put them up on our kids' final lap to simulate a stopped car or a person unexpectedly in their path. Before the test, we made sure an alert driver could easily stop in time. But watch our drowsy kids. Whoa! They're so disoriented, they barely hit the brakes.
Whoa, okay, that was fun. I just killed somebody, didn't I?
Imagine if that cone had been someone's pet or child.
After I sat there for a minute and realized what I did, that's a tough pill to swallow.
That was an eye-opener because that thing that you never know is going to happen that will just come out of nowhere. That's what you have to be prepared for. And if you're tired, you might not be.
a realization that came too late for Rusty Burris.
When you're tired, stop. Don't push it. Because even though you've only got a mile left, you could be throwing your entire life away trying to drive one more mile.
Now, sleep experts say parents should treat drowsy driving just like drunk driving. Tell your kid if he's tired to call you. You'll come pick him up. Or if he gets tired on a long drive, tell him to pull off the road, get some caffeine, and take a 20-minute nap. That should help revive him. Meredith?
All right, Lisa Myers, thank you very much.
It's a pretty dangerous situation, fatigue, because it does sneak up on you. Thing I want you to remember is that fatigue driving is really as bad as drunk driving because you exhibit the same type of behavior. You don't stay in your lane. You go through stop signs. So just remember that being tired, you may get pulled over and they think that you're a drunk driver. So the last thing here, you may experience some of the things that we talked about tonight after you get your license for the first time. So we're not going to be able to practice everything. So know what your skill level is when you drive in some of these bad situations. Don't be a hero. If you don't have to drive, don't drive. You know, get a little bit of experience, get 10, 15 minutes. Don't think that you're going to be able to handle an hour of driving in a snowstorm. But driving for 10, 15 minutes, you know, someplace on a back road is good experience. And you should try to get that. So always try to side on caution. That is the best practice. And even though a crash may not be your fault, it can still affect you physically and emotionally after being involved in a crash. And we don't want you to ever to experience that type of thing where the car is totaled or you get extremely injured or someone else. So be smart when it comes to bad weather. So that takes care of driving in hazardous conditions. So Chapter 13 is what you had for homework. So if you haven't done the reading or done the questions, please send that along with me. That was Section 3 in the manual. Tomorrow's class and for Thursday's class, we're going to spend the next two classes talking about alcohol and drugs. The first part tomorrow will be on the effects of alcohol in the body and the mind. And then we'll be talking about how that relates to driving. And then on Thursday, we'll be talking about penalties and how states are going to basically, view what you've done behind the wheel of the car and what to expect if you ever get pulled over. So that takes care of tonight's class. So remember that if you do want to drive, I believe I told Colette that she could drive, and I think Sabrina wants 1 o'clock. I can do 1 o'clock. I think Colette's got 3 o'clock, so I've got a 4 o'clock open if someone wants it, so make sure that you text me. So remember, you need to text when you come to class. You need to text when you leave class. That is the roster. So Troy, if you're still on right now, you better text me tonight because you've got some stuff to do if you're going to stay in driver's ed because you're on your way out. So that's it for us tonight, except for Troy. Troy, you better text me. All right, that's it for tonight. See you tomorrow at 7:30, unless I'm driving with you tomorrow. Have a good night.